This is the story of John Green, whose life was sadly taken. To this day, the perpetrators of this horrific crime have still not been caught. John Green was born on the 31st of July, 1954, in Dorset, England. His friends and family described him as a man of high intelligence, quiet and gentle. He had a fiancée of 18 years named Laurie de Carteret, and he lived in a property that he rented off of his mother at 457 Poole Road. The property had a basement flat where he lived, a shop, and a flat above the shop which was used as his office, I believe. He worked all of his life. A quote from Laurie states, "I never knew him not to work. He was always running his own business, or making a living through dealing in antiques, or working as a metallurgist or a piano restorer. He was a very intelligent man who was good at many things, and a craftsman who ran his own forge, as well as an inventor. He seemed to have a very fulfilling life, spending time with his friends, and a hobby of his was sailing. In the months prior to February 1991, he had been in the process of setting up another one of his business ventures, which was a marine security company with optic fibre. The only issue was that he had run out of money to repay the loan that he had taken out from the bank. On the 1st of February 1991, John was spotted around the area of Branksome, to which people said he was acting completely normally. Later on that evening, Laurie, his partner, went over to see him. She let herself into the property. As she was walking around the property, the lights were on and the television, but something smelt strange. She walked over to the cooker and found food burning. It was actually still alight, and she had assumed that John had popped out and forgotten that he was cooking. She did a quick search of the flat, and assuming he was out, she left him a note saying that she would be back the next day at around 5 p.m. So the next day, on the 2nd of February 1991, at 5:30 p.m, Laurie returned as she had said in her note. Only something was wrong. Everything was as it was the night before. She once again searched the flat and couldn't seem to find John. It was only when she had decided to go back up and see if he had left her a voicemail was it that she discovered him slumped between a window and a desk. His eyes were still open, but there was no obvious cause of death to Laurie. She decided to call his business partner, Phil Weatherly, who arrived as well as the police. When the police arrived, they had told Phil to take Laurie home, and he proceeded to take her to Irene, John's mother's, in Camford Cliffs. It was only when the police arrived at his mother's asking them to go for questioning did they realise that something was terribly wrong. It turned out that John had been the victim of a frenzied knife attack. He had died on the 1st of February 1991 between 3:15 p.m. and 4 p.m. One of the stab wounds had actually gone right through his body. As police procedure, they questioned Laurie and his business partner. Laurie was actually questioned for 36 long hours before police determined that she was not the perpetrator and could eventually be excluded from the investigation. This left police with the task of trying to piece together a crime where they did not even know where he had been killed, as it was entirely not clear to them. There was no signs of a break-in or a struggle, and nothing had been taken from the property. The other factor in the investigation which caused issues was the fact John had held a party for his friend's birthday, Jude Holiday, at the property the week before, which 50 people attended, so fingerprints were unable to be helpful in the investigation. Over the next few weeks, the police interviewed a number of people, including people who had attended the party. Detective John Homer stated, "We are more optimistic following a good response from the public. We have received information which has allowed us to broaden out the inquiry, and we have heard from a number of guests at the party he held on the 26th of January. Although people from the party were unable to give any further leads on what had happened to John, they also spoke to witnesses. One was a woman sitting in her car waiting for her husband in a lay-by outside of the parade of shops, who had called up the police inquiry line, saying that she had seen two men jostling John into the shop the afternoon of the murder. A third witness had told police they had seen the men leaving the shop 45 minutes later. The police also received an anonymous letter a few weeks into the investigation, and it said that the person saw him with two men at the entrance to his shop. John had looked pale and frightened, and that he had been involved in a tussle with them. They were seen trying to get him to go into his shop, and John was seen trying to walk away. But they were then seen to go into the shop, and John was not seen alive again. The person who wrote the letter was appealed to by police, as they must have been watching for several minutes, and the author of the letter had stated that they were waiting for someone to pick them up as their car had broken down. The letter also gave descriptions of the two men seen with John. The men was described as a man aged 20 to 24, 5'9" to 5'10" tall, with dirty blonde or auburn hair with highlights, light faded blue jeans and a dark blue top. The other man was aged about 40, 5'10" with dark hair, unshaven and much thicker set than the other man, brown trousers and a lighter brown zip-up top. Detective John Homer stated, "It is quite clear this incident took place, and it is crucial for us to talk to these two men. At the moment, they are the last people to see John Green alive." Another line of inquiry was John Green's next-door neighbour. She had heard shouting through the wall on the 31st of January 1991 between a man and a woman. The neighbour said that she heard the conversation quite clearly, and that she had heard the woman threaten to knife a man. She said that she then heard some footsteps, so she quickly rushed to the lounge to look through the window and just caught the glimpse of a woman walking off. It was also noted that it was thought that two old-aged women had got onto the bus outside John Green's shop at about 6:15 p.m. the day that he had died, and the police wanted to trace them. Traders in the area had spoken to police, and greengrocer Christine Cooney said, "He used to come in occasionally, but he wasn't the type of person who made his presence felt. He wouldn't stand around and make small talk." Another trader said, "He was a very decent, quiet man who never interfered with anybody. Nobody deserves to die that way. Everybody around here is frightened to death. The murderer could still be around. He's got to be a lunatic." Lunchtime drinkers in the nearby Branksome Railway Hotel said Mr. Green, who was a regular, was, quote, "slightly hippie-ish, had not been in the premises recently." One pub regular said Mr. Green held a big party at his place last weekend. "It was very loud. I think the police were called in the end." Police also investigated a mysterious meeting that John had on the 29th of January 1991. It was detailed in his diary, and it was a meeting at a roadside cafe on the A33 about 8 miles north of Basingstoke in Heckfield at 12 p.m. noon, with an unnamed person. The diary entry read, "A33, 8 miles, Little Chef Wellington, 12 o'clock. The police said that he could have had a business meeting, or that he might have been meeting a friend and wanted to find out who he was meeting and why he had gone there. Unfortunately, they were never able to find out who he was meeting or why, as no one knew the purpose of the meeting. This line of inquiry was sadly not helpful. His last known credit card activity was to pay for goods at the Typewriter Centre on Seymour Road. Crime Watch made a couple of appeals to the public in relation to his death, and friends and family put up an award of £13,000, which eventually grew to £20,000. in a bid for people to come forward with information. There was also a short documentary, which was called The Death of the Piano Man, which interviewed his partner and friends. As there was no real eyewitnesses and no murder weapon has ever been found, John's case unfortunately started to get cold. Although there had been thousands of lines of inquiry and more than 1,000 statements taken from police, and they had even flew over to America to interview a couple who had owned the Branksome Railway Hotel, this also drew a blank. Police tried to figure out the murder and decided that it must have been a case of mistaken identity. Although there was one possible motive, it was said that John had been involved, possibly, in a plot or a scam to rip people off regarding bricks of cannabis due to him being in debt with the loan from the bank. But police say that there was no evidence that he was ever a drug dealer or participated in any illegal activity. As the years went by, no new leads came about, and this case is still cold, although police do still review it as procedure. In 2014, Laurie decided to set up a Facebook page in a bid to try and get some new leads, and also to remember him. She told the Daily Echo, "It just feels right, and it's also challenging for me. I feel strong enough in myself now that I think it's about time that something was done." She also stated, "It's to raise awareness again, because it's just not right. Or just that whoever killed John is getting off scot-free. They're still out there." Already people are beginning to open up on the page, which is quite interesting. The general feeling of what's being said on the group is that it could have been mistaken identity, but I've heard that before, and even the police have suggested it. My message would be, even if you're scared, because I know what it feels like, please give up some information anonymously. Laurie also added, "John was only 36 when he was murdered, and that's young. I just know in my heart and soul that people know who did this, but they're afraid to say it. There is no such thing as the perfect murder. For myself and my family, we want some kind of closure, because 23 years to live not knowing why or who it was lives with you. It never leaves me. It's a constant puzzle." As of 2025, there have been no new leads that I'm aware of in this case, and it is still unsolved. If you or anyone you know has any information regarding this serious crime, please contact the correct authorities in the description box below so that John's friends and family can have some closure and John can receive the justice he deserves after 34 years of no answers. I leave you with a quote from Laurie from the Facebook group she has made, which will also be in the description box, to sum up the person that his family, partner, and friends have lost. John loved life, taking each day as an adventure, living life to the full. He worked hard and he knew how to party.